was performed at logon. So these were all the logon actions, and we've said that that login scripts all apply at logon and they all apply at logoff, but we've got these additional trigger points. So what's the benefit of having these? If I jump back to my user, who's still currently logged on, and we have a look in the My Computer area, we see that we have the finance drive which has been mapped. Now we've mapped this drive at logon because the user needs access to this drive at logon. But when we have other conventional methods of mapping drives, mapping printers, etc., if the user had access to 5 map drives because they use 5 applications which require 5 map drives, you'd have to map those drives when the user logged on just in case the user used that application in question. If the user had access to 10 printers or 5 printers and 1 colour printer that they used once in a blue moon, what you do is you map those printers just in case the user was going to use that printer. So that's wasting a lot of time at logon if that user doesn't use any of those resources. So let's be a little bit more clever with that. As an example, my user is going to use an application, in this case Notepad, which needs a map drive for it to run. When my user launches Notepad, if you keep your eye on the network drives area, when they launch this application, the actual launching of the application itself has triggered the map drive. So now the user has access to this map drive. When that application is closed and the drive is no longer needed, without any user intervention, that drive is unmapped. So what we're doing here, we're applying policy on demand. Rather than actually mapping everything or applying all these logon actions, applying them all at logon, we can do this on demand. So let's map that drive when the application launches that requires the map drive. Let's map the printer when the user uses the application which requires the colour printer. Okay, so everything we've just looked at the moment is all to do with the policy. So what do we want to allow the users to be able to see with regards to resources as administrators? So things like map drives, map printers, that type of thing, setting up that desktop for the user. We also have to take into consideration the personalization side of things. So the standard method you'd be using to capture the user's personalization would be the roaming profile. But as we know, there's lots of problems associated with the roaming profile, which we'll go into shortly. So first thing we need to do in this environment is actually create some user personalization. I'm just going to run a few applications just to give a demonstration. So here I can change the size of the window for Notepad, also change the fonts. So basically personalizing the application. So there's one piece of personalization. If I launch MS Paint, my user might like to have the toolbar just outside the window with this application, and then I might run more of a corporate application, Microsoft Word. Accept the user's username, because this is all being run for the first time. Accept the privacy options, and then my user might want to personalize this application by changing the background to a nice summery black colour, and change the custom dictionary to something random, English Canadian. So OK to that. So there we go, we've got some user personalisation. They might also want to have the screen floating around in the middle. So that's some user personalisation. If we're using conventional methods to capture that user's personalisation, so my user wanted to roam onto another terminal server, say, or roam onto another desktop, if we wanted to capture that user personalisation with the roaming profile, the user would have to log off. Now we'd capture the user personalisation, but we'd also capture all the files and folders associated with the user's profile, which has to transfer across the network to the place where you store the roaming profiles. Now, what we see there is the larger the actual profiles get, the slower logins actually take and log off times actually take, because it's full of this profile, what we class as the profile bloat. Why do we need to capture all the files and folders associated with the user's profile when those changes that I made to the user's applications are literally just registry files, so changes to the user's registry. And also, why do we actually have to do this when the user logs off? Why do we actually have to capture these files and that personalization when the user logs off? So let's see how we can actually do things differently with Environment Manager. What I'm actually going to do now, rather than log my user off, I'm just going to create a concurrent session onto another desktop. So I'm going to connect to the XP Desktop 2 now. So here I'm connecting to XP Desktop 2, but as the same user, as the accountant. So not having to log off one desktop, but logging onto a different machine as the same user, creating a concurrent session. So again, Environment Managers, here we're loading the same mandatory profile as before and setting this desktop up as a finance user. So we've got the same background, same applications firing up, same icons on the desktop, etc. What we will also see, if I start to run the applications which I've personalised in the previous session, if I launch Notepad, that user personalisation has come across. If I launch MS Paint, we see that the toolbar is now floating outside the application. And if I run Microsoft Word, we're not prompted for the user's personalisation. The background is set to black. It's floating in the middle of the screen. And if we check the Word options, we should see that the custom dictionary is set to English Canadian. So we've actually captured that user's personalisation from one session to the other, and we've not had to log off. So how are we actually doing things? How are we doing things differently? Well, if I make another change within this user's environment, so make a change to Spanish Dominican Republic, and change the background to silver this time and click OK. If I now close the application, what we actually do now with the Environment Manager, we capture that user personalization when the application closes. We do that via our personalization server, which stores that user personalization, so stores the changes to that application in our personalization database. So what we do now, if I move over to my other session, when I run the same application in the other session, Environment Manager sees that that application is being run, and we inject the user personalization from the previous session into that session. So you see that the personalization moves across the different sessions without the user having to log off. To see the benefits of that, if I just log my user off, we can actually go and have a look at the personalization server and see where that user's personalization is being captured. If I jump back to my management of the Environment Manager console now, what you can see is the console we were in at the beginning was using the policy side of the console, but we also have the personalization side. If I click on there, you can see that it switches to the other side of the config, which handles the personalization. If I click connect, we can actually connect into the personalization server. And what we're doing here is we're connecting live into the personalization server. So whereas before, in the policy side, any changes you make are pushed down using the management server, management console, pushing down to the endpoints, here we're actually connecting directly into the personalization server. So changes that we make here are live. Here I've actually set